Hi guys, welcome back to In Case of Econ Struggles, and welcome to an intermediate macro struggle. This is going to be the first in a series of videos where I give some lectures on intermediate macroeconomics. Roughly each video is going to be a chapter in your macroeconomics textbook, and so what I want to do right now is just sort of lay out how those videos are going to go, and I want to frame it in terms of the big questions we're going to answer for intermediate macroeconomics. And again, at this point, this is sort of like a rough sketch of what I'm going to do. So there might be changes, there might be additional videos that come out for this series, but this is sort of what I'm planning right now. If you're excited about a particular one, definitely let me know in the comments below. And if you think I'm not going to cover something or want to make sure I'm going to cover something, definitely feel free to ask them in the comments below as well. But first, what I thought I'd talk about is what exactly I want you to get out of these videos. And really, I think it could be one of two things or both. So first, you could either use these videos to review from lectures you see in class. I'm going to talk about additional examples that aren't necessarily in the book. I'm going to try to explain everything in a very intuitive way versus in sort of a mathy way. The other great opportunity you're going to have is you're going to be able to answer questions in a way where you don't have to worry about what I think about your questions. If you've got a question, definitely feel free to ask it. Get clarification. I'm very happy to try and explain things a couple of different ways to make sure you get it. But also in doing that, you're going to be able to read answers to other people's questions. You're going to be able to engage with the community of people who are all trying to understand macroeconomics in a better way, who might be struggling or just want that extra clarification, that extra level of understanding. The other thing you could do is you could watch some of these videos before you get a lecture on that topic. So what you can do is you can sort of try to use this as a first look at the material, and then whatever your professor goes over in class is just going to sort of enhance what you already know. And so that might be a good way to make sure you really get what your professor's talking about in lecture because you've gotten it before and you were able to do that with the video rather than, say, sitting down and watching a textbook. And again, you're able to ask clarifications. You can come back to this video and ask questions after watching it and being in class. Totally fine. Again, this is going to be a great place to engage in sort of those macro questions. So what exactly are we going to talk about in macroeconomics? Well, let's think about it in terms of the big questions we're going to try to answer. And again, I'm just going to throw what I think each video is going to cover. So like part 2, this will be the second video. They might be split up if they get too long, but I'm going to try out this longer lecture sort of format. So here we go. The first big question that we're going to try to answer is how exactly do we measure economic activity? So we'll talk about how we try to estimate like the US GDP, for example. And then once we sort of think about how we can measure economic activity, how can we model the economy? The economy is huge, but how can we model it in a simple way that still does a lot of what we want to do so that we can answer questions about how the economy responds to things like COVID? So I'm going to split that part up into 3 parts. So we're going to have 3 different markets. And if you've heard of the ISLM or the ADAS, aggregate demand, aggregate supply, that'll be its own part as well. Next, we're going to sort of switch gears and think about how can we model economic growth? Why do economies grow? Why do they grow at a constant rate? How can we sort of think about that? And why do we care about economic growth? So once we do growth, then we also want to think about business cycles, or how can we use these models that we've already developed to sort of think about or model recessions and booms in the economy, how the economy responds to those recessions and booms. And then right after we get here, we're going to learn that there are a couple different models people have of the economy. And I want to talk about, probably in 3 parts, why we have different models of the economy. So this is going to be like Keynesian classical, real business cycle stuff. All of those are going to fall under this question of why do we have different models of the economy. Once we know the models of the economy, we're going to ask our final set of questions, which is how can we use all of these different models to evaluate policy in the real world? How can we actually apply what we've learned to situations that have actually happened or to hypothetical situations of the world? And then I'm going to add a part, it's going to be part 12 or so, where I'm just going to try and give you a bunch of different ways that you can remember all of this in a way that's intuitive, where you don't have to sit there with flashcards and try to memorize a bunch of stuff. But if you just think about it for a while, you can sort of understand what's happening. That's what I really want you to get out of this part. And then part 8, we're basically just going to do practice questions using all of these different models. And we're going to talk about the different ways that you could be asked a question, how to approach them, how to think about them, how to make sure you're correct, and just generally get you ready for sort of like final exam type questions. So that's what we're going to talk about in this series. Again, the videos are going to be a little longer, a little more comprehensive. But as we go through all of these, we're still going to be using our example forward approach that I use in my other videos. So we're going to use Bill a lot, where Bill has perfect knowledge of everything that's happening. He's perfectly rational. We're going to give Bill so many roles. Bill's going to be a firm. Bill's going to be a person. Bill's going to be the Federal Reserve. Bill's going to wear a lot of hats. We're really going to use Bill in order to explain what's happening in macroeconomics. And again, with those examples, I'll pose some questions and try to answer them. If you've got other questions, definitely feel free to throw those into the comments at any time. I'll try to give other explanations, especially if there's a common question that everyone seems to have. Maybe I'll throw in a separate video just about that specific question. But I'm pretty flexible. This is sort of my structure for the rest of these lectures. And if you're excited about them, definitely like this video, definitely put a comment below. And if you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time for another case of econ struggles.